Yeah, a little story time here. When I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, if you're wondering if it's Kansas or Missouri. And my dad and I did have a great relationship growing up, but later on in life, it got much better. And one of the things he and I decided to start doing every year, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, okay? And so actually someone is? All right. Yeah, man, I love it. Like the extended editions, everything. Matter of fact, one of my favorite Memorial Day weekends ever, we lived in Hawaii for a year, and one of my best friends, who's actually now in Course Gold, California. Yeah, thanks. All right. And anyway, so one Memorial Day weekend, we got all the extended editions of the Lord of the Rings series, and we watched them all weekend, ate all the food. He did all the 7-course meals and everything. It was fantastic. But my dad and I decided every year when the films came out in the theaters, we were going to go and see it together. And, they're, an hour and a half, hour and 45, 2 hours. I don't know how long they are. But we would do this every year. And one Christmas in particular, I came home to Kansas City. I left after I was 18, graduated high school, left. And I kind of describe it this way. My family was like a black hole of stupidity. And I didn't want to live there around them because I was going to get sucked into the craziness. And so I left, but I came back and we would watch these films. We'd go to the theater. And one year I came back and I had a cold. I just wasn't feeling really well. And every time we would go, my he's a big stickler on this. I never do this because it's way too expensive, but he'd always hey, we're going to get a Coke and you're going to get a treat. And so we get the biggest Coke we could get and a treat. And we're in the film and we're just watching the movie the whole time. And about 45 minutes into the film, I'm done with the Coke, right? And I've got tissues in my pockets because I'm blowing my nose. I'm like it's just running and running and running. So I'm blowing my nose. I'm like, where do I put these tissues? So I start shoving them down into the cup. And then this is going on for over an hour. And then I run out of tissues. So then I'm I'm spitting down on the straw, for an hour I'm doing this. And the film gets done. And so we're leaving, and I go, and we're in the restroom. I don't know if you know this, ladies, but the guys, in the guys' restroom, you're standing kind of next to each other, and you can talk to each other like right there, right? And so I'm doing my business, my dad's doing his business, and he looks at me, he's like, your Coke was kind of weak, wasn't it? I'm like, what? He's like, your Coke, it was kind of weak, wasn't it? When we're leaving, I noticed you had a lot of Coke left in there, so I took a swig, and it was just kind of weak. And I started gagging, man. I ran outside, and he's like, what? He's like, what? What's going on? Out in the parking lot, I was like, Dad, I've been spitting in that cup for over an hour, all my snot, and he just took a big swig of it. And so the moral of that story is just, you never know sometimes what you're going to get into. And I kind of feel like, Dallas, you kind of inviting me here, you don't know really what you're getting into, all right? Yeah, that's right. And he really has no idea who I am. Just a few texts and some phone calls and some good conversations. But I'm glad you invited me anyway. And we'll find out what this is going to be. And really, honest to truth, guys, I'm excited to be with you. You guys have no idea. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, keep doing your thing. And I don't know if you know where Keynote is, but bring that up. Oh, sorry. You need my code? There you go. You guys, what a special place you have here. Think about one of the shout outs I was thinking today as I was talking with Dallas earlier was that someone gave over $100,000 for a lot of you to be here. What is it, $180,000 or something like that, a gift to make a space for you to be here. I think about this lodge, all right? And, all right, so let's see here. Let's get it up before, that way we... No. All right. How do we get this thing to play? All right, hold on here. All right. Does anyone know how to get this thing to play?
Yeah, press the top button.
Right here? Boom. Oh, sweet. Okay. Think about this lodge. Think about this history here. There's something about, I don't know if you know what this word is, liminal spaces. It's a space that it's the in-between. It's not where you are, not where you're going to be, but it's an in-between space. And the Joshua Fest, everything that's gone in to creating a space for you to get out of your norm, to get away from your normal lives, get away and hear the voice of God. What a special opportunity you have. Now, you're not meant to live on this mountain for the rest of your life, probably. Some might. But you got to come off the mountain at some point. But what an amazing opportunity you have. And not just that. And I'm a big believer in it. My son, actually, he's a sophomore at UGA now. He just got back from Australia. He did a gap year in Australia called Cape and Ray. And he absolutely loved it. He had that opportunity. I'm a big believer in these opportunities. But not just that, but then the community you have. I love the fact that you guys gave shout outs and affirmations to one another. That's so important. Because, and we'll talk about this maybe in a couple days, and when we see how the lens that we see the scriptures through, but our journey in the West, it's so individual. And the scriptures aren't individual. It's not between God and you. It's between God and us. He called himself a community, and yes, it's made up of individuals. And so yes, there is this relationship that's individual, but it's corporate. And so whenever you're reading the scriptures, it's not, hey, what does it say for me? It's what does it say for us? Because we live in community. And you have to have that community with one another. So I love the fact that you have that here. And, you know, there's going to be times in your life, I forget who I was talking to today, one of you young men who has a passion to create a ministry for other young men to live in community with one another. And, you know, there are times in my life that I've had those relationships, special relationships. And there's other times where I haven't had that. And you guys have a great opportunity here. And so take full advantage of it. Because like you said, you have 55 days left. And then you leave this mountain and you re-enter normal space. And some of you might be a little bit nervous about going back to where social media is readily available and all the movies and all the different things. Not that those things are in themselves wrong or bad. They can be good. They can be used and leveraged for the kingdom. But at the same time, you might be nervous about how am I going to re-enter, and I'm not quite ready to go back into that. And so, but you got 55 more days to press in, and that's exciting for each of you. So a little bit about myself, and then I'll show my family. We are in Georgia. I'm a nobody, okay? Literally. I'm a nobody, all right? I don't have a PhD. I'm not super smart. I'm just a normal guy. I love Jesus, and I'm trying to break generational patterns for my family of generations, and trying to set a new stage for my kids and my family going forward, and so that my kids can go further than me, and then the next generation that I get to disciple can go further than me. All right, and so I'm screwed up. I'm messed up. I have a temper. I got bad language from my father, and so sometimes if I lose a little bit there, my kids have heard too many things from me, all right, and I have to apologize. I'm sorry that they probably learned most of their curse words from their father, but I've been in ministry for 20 years, so all of that at the same time I've been in ministry, okay, and so it's a mess. My life is a mess, but I love Jesus, and I want young people to love Jesus. And I want you to break the addictions and the patterns that have been set for you and the things you've received from your family. I want you to break those and embrace your identity in Jesus, okay? And so here, let me show you, this is my family. And so this is my beautiful wife, Allie. We have been married almost 25 years. And when we hit 25 years, we will be the longest married couple on my side of the family ever, all right? So my mom and dad made it 24, and then they divorced. So, and so I met her in college down in Florida. I stalked her. I saw her. She was beautiful. So that was like, I had a checklist for a woman in my life, and one of them was she needed to be beautiful. And she checked that, so I started stalking her. And then finally got a chance to meet her. And then on our first date, and the second thing on my list was need to be coordinated and athletic. So I took her to play tennis. And checked the box. She's very athletic, and that was awesome. And anyway, more on that checklist later. But anyway, we have 5 children, 5 amazing kids. My son Chase in the middle there, tan shirt. He's the one that went to Australia. That's funny. He had cut his own hair there. And but anyway, and he's a sophomore at UGA. Loves Jesus. I'm so thankful. I don't know. I mean, I would take some credit for it, but I really don't take any credit for it. See, God has got a hold of his life, and he is pursuing Jesus above all else. He wants to live overseas and share the gospel one day, and I'm super proud of him. Then my daughter, Avi, she is 17, going on like 29, and she's stressing me out, okay? And young men, she's beautiful, and young men are showing attention to her, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it, okay? And so she is amazing young girl, and she's going to be a senior next year. And her basketball team just won the state championship, so pretty awesome that. It's been third team in our school's history to do that, and so she's the defensive stopper. So you got the star player on the other team. My daughter always has to guard her. So that's her role on the team. Does an amazing job. State championship game, girl who averaged 32 points, only scored 2 on her. So I'm really proud of her. Anyway, then my son Hudson right here. He is a senior in high school, and he is going somewhere next year, doing something. And he thinks college or maybe a gap year, we don't know. And maybe, you never know. And so I'm really proud of him. And he's kind of leaning between something medical related or ministry. So we'll see. I have no idea. And then my daughter Zoe, she is 9. And so we had 4 children in 5 years, and then had an 8-year gap. And surprise, Zoe. And she is awesome. She is my artsy-fartsy kid, okay? So like all my other kids are athletic, sports, everything. And she likes drama and art and music. And she's in theater right now, The Wizard of Oz, and doing a great job. And anyway, I said I have 5 kids. This is my daughter, Reagan. And she is my eldest, my first. And tonight we're going to share a lot of our story about her. She passed away when she was 10. And still hurts. This was actually when she was 10. Amazing eyes, beautiful girl. Man, I remember my wife and I, we got married in 2000, and a couple years later we got pregnant, and we were surprised, about what the child we were going to have. We didn't know if it was a boy or a girl, and I was convinced I was going to have a son first. And we were down in Florida, and got her to got to the hospital, and matter of fact, all 5 of our kids, I always had this dream of driving really fast to the hospital. It didn't happen for us. We had to induce every one of our kids because my wife just couldn't go into labor. We tried everything. Anyway, but so I never got to do that. Bummer. But we got to the hospital. We're having Reagan, and she comes out, and they're like, "It's a girl." And I remember thinking, "What? A girl, girl?" And then they had to do some stuff with her, and so I didn't get to quite hold her right off the start. And so hey, we're gonna have about 15 minutes before we bring her back to the room, and I'm like, okay. And I'm like, hey, babe, I'm gonna go outside real quick. So I go outside of the hospital. I'm like, God, it's a girl. and I was like, I didn't know what to do with that. I'm honestly a little, I wasn't disappointed, but I was like, what am I doing? But then I came inside, and they brought her to me. They put her in my arms. And man, she had me wrapped around her finger from the get-go. I mean, I was done. And she's just was the greatest gift. I encourage you to have kids, guys. Get married, have kids. It's a great plan in life. And she, they brought her to me, and I held her, and I was wrapped around her finger all 10 years of her life. Anyway, and I'll share a little bit later what happened with Reagan, and that's part of what we're going to talk about tonight. Tonight's going to be weird. It's going to be stories about kind of my life and some lessons I've learned. And then tomorrow we'll talk more about Israel and our calling there, and our calling, our volunteering to go there. And then we'll do some more actually teaching, but tonight's just kind of a little bit about us. This is our dog. And her name is Casey for Kansas City, because that's where I'm from. And so Casey, it's spelled just Casey. And actually we got her, 7 months ago. She's about 2 years old. A family member had her, couldn't keep up with her. She's really busy and active. And our family wanted a dog, and it was free, so I was like, we'll take her. And she is absolutely amazing. After Reagan died, we got our counselors encouraged us to get a dog, and we had a dog. Her name was Kitty. And because my daughter's, Reagan's favorite book was a dog called Kitty. I don't know if any of you read that when you were little. And so when we got her, my kids were like, well, her name's going to be Kitty because Reagan wanted a dog named Kitty. And so this is our second dog, Casey. And then to round out the family, this is Sam. And Sam is our Israeli street cat that struck it rich, okay? So my daughter comes home one day we're living in Israel, and she comes home and is like, Dad, there's kittens. Can I have one? It's free. And there's no such thing as free animals, but whatever. And so we brought Sam home, and man, this thing cost me an arm and a leg to bring back to the U.S., but it's there, and Sam is Sam. All right, and so, okay, so where do I want to go? I want to tell you a little bit about my childhood because I think maybe some of you can relate. I saw some people nod their heads when I said my family was like a cesspool of stupidity growing up. It was like my mom and dad were married before. My dad had 2 kids. My mom had 1. And then I'm pretty sure my mom and dad had an affair with each other and got pregnant with my sister Michelle. Because if I do the timeline when they got married and when she was born, she was already a thing when they got married. And then I came along. I was the youngest of 5. So I say I have 2 brothers, 2 sisters, really. 1 full-blooded sister, the rest are half, but they're my brothers and sisters, right? Although my elder siblings live with their parents. My brother Jeff lived with his dad. My brother Jeremy and my sister Kim live with their mom. And then me and my sister were with my parents. Good family, but not godly by any means. I think my parents probably knew Jesus, but we didn't live that way. Matter of fact, my mom and dad kind of disagreed on faith. My dad grew up in one system, my mom grew up in another, and because they couldn't agree, we just didn't do anything. And my dad was pretty abusive, for sure, emotionally, verbally. Sometimes physically, not terrible. I do remember my mom getting some black eyes and things, and he was violent at times. I remember throwing bottles at my brother, breaking them against the wall. I was pretty scared of my dad. I hated him growing up. I really did. I remember it kind of came to a head one time. I was probably 12, 13, maybe 14, and my mom and dad, they were getting fights periodically, and of course there's always, we're going to stay together until the kids get older, and then we'll divorce, and blah, 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 all that junk. And I remember one night my parents are fighting, and then my dad gets all us kids up because, of course, what do good parents do? They bring their kids into the fight and try to get them to pick sides, right? So I'm in my tidy whities, get out of bed, and it's like 1 a.m, and they're fighting and yelling and screaming, and he asked some question of my sister, and my sister didn't answer it the way he wanted it to be answered. He grabs a gun, and I was out of there. I don't know what happened, but I ran. And I ran out the house 1 a.m, ran away. I ran about 2.5, 3 miles to a friend's house in my tidy whities. And knocking on the door in the middle of the night saying, my dad pulled a gun, I don't know what to do. And my mom, anyways, a crazy story, but my dad went out looking for me. I actually saw him drive by their house, but I was hiding. And so we got home with my mom, and we left. We went to my brother's house. He was married at the time. And I remember thinking my dad was going to find us that night. And my brother, he had a lot of guns. And I remember fantasizing that my dad was going to show up at the house and I was going to shoot him. And I wanted to. That's how much I hated my dad. And so why do I share that with you? Not because I'm proud of that, by any means. But maybe some of your guys' home life isn't great. And you're not bound by that, okay? My life hasn't been perfect. It's not like I grew up in this amazing godly home and everything handed to me. It's a tough journey that it's been on. And I remember wanting to kill my dad. Good story, though. God used that season in my dad's life when we were away to radically change his life. And he became an amazing follower of Jesus. And I was telling Michael, I think, because she had a Jesus hat on today, At the end of my dad's life, the last 10 years, matter of fact, my mom and dad divorced, but my dad really started pursuing Jesus. He started serving at his church. He actually went to Costa Rica, learned the language, and to do missions. And he made it a point. Everything he wore had Jesus Saves on it. All right, everything, every hat, every shirt. He embroidered everything with Jesus Saves, and it got actually a little annoying, but it was amazing to see the life change in my dad. And so there is redemption there. But like a lot of you, home wasn't great. And I remember making up stories to my friends about my home and my siblings, because my dad was a state rep for a while, and he was a moral man, but he wasn't a godly man when I was younger. And I was in the public school system, and my dad kind of fought against a certain type of sex education for first graders. And my teacher didn't like that. And I don't remember this, but supposedly she put me out of the classroom and wouldn't teach me, refused to teach me. And so my parents put me in a Christian school. And I remember going to a Christian school from that point on, and everybody was saved. Everybody followed Jesus. And I'm like, okay, all right. So I made up a story. I was like, yeah, I followed Jesus, and I got saved at such and such. So I completely made it up, just telling the story, because I was embarrassed of my family and who I was. And of course, like a lot of you guys, I got exposed to things because it wasn't a godly home. Back in the day, we didn't have internet. And so the way I got introduced to pornography was girly magazines from my grandfather's stash, up in his closet, and or going to a friend's house and they had magazines, or Big Brother had magazines or something. Still as addictive as the stuff you see on your phones and things. But I remember getting exposed to those things. But I didn't have, and this is what I want to get to, I didn't have a dad or an adult ally in my life to work through all these different things. And I want to tell you, it's so important, especially for you who didn't have that, like I didn't have that. It is so important for you to learn how to be an adult ally to yourself. Or maybe you don't even know what I'm talking about. Let me give an example. When I was little, I knocked a tooth out, my front tooth, and then I got up on the sink to look at my tooth that I knocked out, and I fell and knocked out my other tooth. And when my teeth came in, literally they stuck out straight, like buck teeth, major buck teeth. And I knew it. Everybody else knew I had buck teeth. And kids at school made fun of me. Everybody called me Beaver. I don't know if you remember the show Leave It to Beaver, but everybody called me Beaver. And I mean, it just was an indelible print on my mind that I had buck teeth. Now, I ended up getting braces and things, but for 20 years of my life, if you saw me, I would usually sit like this because I still saw myself as having buck teeth. And I remember I got introduced to this concept of an adult ally where you speak the truth to yourself. You guys have to learn to speak what is true to you, all right? Not your truth, but what is true to your heart. And I remember they said, you know what you need to hear? Because my mom and dad are like, okay, yeah, if they call you Beaver, don't worry about it. Just say, thanks, Wally, because Wally was a kid on Leave It to Beaver. That didn't help, all right? That didn't help at all. But I remember what they said, the truth is this. You need to, Bryon, you do have buck teeth. That's the truth. But you're going to get braces, and it's going to be fixed, and your teeth are going to be just fine. And no one's ever going to know. That was the truth. You know what? If I had been told that as a 10-year-old, I wouldn't have battled thinking I had buck teeth when I was 35. You see what I'm saying? You okay? Okay, Jessica? All right. And I remember pornography. I remember so much shame involved because I was just a dirty person because I liked it. Instead of the truth, the adult ally truth is like when my son was first exposed to pornography, he was in 3rd grade, Christian school, lunch table, kids with their cell phones. And then I found out that he was looking at it at home, 3rd grade, Chase. And I'm like, I'm not going to do what my dad did, which was nothing. I'm going to speak the truth to my son. So I went to my son. I said, hey, I know you're looking at some stuff. Let's talk about that. You know what the truth is, son? You were made to like that. It's actually a good desire that you like to look at the female form. It's a good thing. God put that in you. But there's ways about doing it. There's boundaries for doing it. There's right ways of seeing that. God has that for you down the road. But you know what? It's a good thing that you like it. And you know what it did? It took the shame away that he was a terrible person. And it said, no, that is a good desire in me, but it's short-circuited because the enemy wants me to take shortcuts to that. And he didn't battle and hasn't battled like I battled for a long time, because when things are in the dark, they fester. All right. I also remember maybe, and I share some of these stories because I'm afraid, I think some of you guys maybe have some similar experiences when you're a kid and maybe need to be set free. I remember experimenting with our neighbors. A girl kissing and stuff like that, touching each other. I remember, I was maybe 8 or 9, and some of us boys, when you touch your privates, it feels good, okay? And I remember some of us boys playing around with each other, and for the longest time, I thought, am I gay? Because I like that? You know what the truth is that I needed to tell myself at that time was, you know what, it's actually natural. Kids experiment. Young kids experiment. And young kids like to be touched. And it's natural, and it's okay. And just because you did that with friends who are of the same sex doesn't mean you're gay, doesn't mean you're a lesbian, doesn't mean you're homosexual. Do you see what I'm saying? You have to speak the truth to yourself, all right? And so anyway, I grew up, went to Christian college, and got out of home, went away, and never planned to go back. And I met my wife there. And Allie, before that, I dated a girl all through high school. I fell in love with her in 5th grade, and we dated all through high school, went to college, and somehow I missed the memo that we were going to date around. I missed that memo. I was a freshman in college, and she was a senior in high school, and I called her at home, and her mom was like, well, she's out with so-and-so. And I'm like, what's she doing with him? And come to find out, I guess we decided to date around. And anyway, so I was a bit brokenhearted, but I waited on her, waited. I was going into my senior year of college, and my dad, going in my senior, he's like, hey, I want to talk to you about something. He's like, I know you're still waiting around for this girl. He's like, but I really think you should date around. And I'm like, nah, Dad, no, my heart's set on her. He's like, no, I really think you do. I think God wants you to date around. And so fall semester of my senior year, I said, you know what, God, I'll test this out. So I'm going to see, so I wrote a song. I like to write songs. And it was kind of a goodbye song to this girl. And I put it in a bottle, all right? And I sealed it up with a note. I said, hey, if you find this, please mail to, and I wrote her name and her address, everything. I'm down on the coast of Florida, okay? And I chucked this bottle into the ocean. Like, I got a buddy to come with me, and I chucked the bottle in the ocean. It actually just comes right back to me. I'm like, Dad, come it. So I pick it up, and I throw it back. And then I walk away. I'm like, I don't care if it comes back. I'm walking away. And I just kind of put it on my mind. I was like, God, if you get this bottle to her, I'll know it's over. All right, 2 months later, I get a call from a friend he's at a college up in Wisconsin. And he says, hey, Bryon. I'm like, wow, Jared, what are you calling me for? He's like, I got a weird question for you. He's like, did you write a note and put it in a bottle and throw it in the ocean to get to Misty? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, she told me to tell you she got it. I'm like, oh my, I can't believe it. Some person in South Florida found it. There's like even a hurricane in between that time I threw it. And I was in the Panhandle, and it was in South Florida, and they found it and sent it to her. And so I'm like, okay, God, obviously it's you, all right? And so but the thing is this. Let me ask you this. Someone tell me this. Did I need to do that? No. That's kind of what's called living by a fleece, right? Instead of living by faith. I didn't need that, because what did I already have? Counsel, right? Counsel from my father saying, hey, I think you need to let it go. But I chose to live by a fleece there. And so then right after that, believe it or not, I met Allie. And like I said, I saw her. She was beautiful. She was athletic after our first date, which I loved. And then I had one other checklist. I was looking for a woman who wanted to be a wife and a mom above all else. And so on one of our 3rd or 4th dates, I sat down with her. I said, hey, what do you want to do with your life, And she's like, wow, you're going to think it's stupid. I'm like, no, I'm not going to think it's stupid. She's like, well, I want to be a wife and mom. I'm like, when we get married? It really was about a couple months after that I asked her to marry me. And so we knew each other 4 months when I proposed. So, yeah. And then, so we met in April, got married, got engaged in August, got married the next June, and it's almost 25 years. So, wow, it's amazing. And 5 kids. So, and we're hanging in there. It worked, all right? And so And here's one thing I want to also share with you guys is a lot of people are going to tell you, I highly recommend you get married. Highly recommend it. And I highly recommend you have children if the Lord opens the womb for that. A lot of people are going to make you say, well, until you're satisfied solely with Jesus, he's not going to give you that other person. But I want to think back to the garden, okay? What was the only thing that wasn't good? Man to be alone. Did man recognize that? No, man didn't recognize that. Who recognized that? God. For man to be, man and woman, for us to be, all we are meant to be, good. In other words, everything that God designed us to be, we need each other. And in particular, he made man and woman to be man and wife. And so it's okay that God is not enough. Did you hear me? All right? Oh, man, that got quiet. God is not enough. Had he been enough, had a lot of preachers been in the garden like, well, no, Adam, until you think God's enough, he's not going to give you somebody. And what did God say? No. I'm not enough. It's not good for man to be alone. Yes?
What about when it says in the Bible that he's like, oh, like you're going to be so much more fruitful when you are single?
Okay, so even the life of Jesus. So yes, there's a life of Jesus where he gave himself fully to studying the Torah and to teaching and making disciples, right? The Apostle Paul, he did the same thing. So yes, there is that, all right? And so there is a calling on your life to be single. You have much more freedom, and I give you that, okay? But I would say those are the exceptions, not the rule, okay? And so it doesn't mean that, that is the plan for everybody, okay? But I would say Paul, Jesus, those who were rabbis at the time, a lot of them would get married by late 30s, early 40s. But it's the exception rather, in my opinion, okay? And so one of the things I want to share with you is this, this weekend, I hope to stir you a little bit. I hope to challenge your thinking. I hope to make you uncomfortable. And one thing is we have to understand as we come to the scriptures, none of us are objective. None of us are. All of us have lenses that we're seeing the scriptures through. All of us have past definitions and things we've heard in the past. We're limited by our experiences. We're limited by where we live. So we come to the scriptures subjective. That means we have the potential of being wrong, okay? And so when I share things with you, I think a lot of times it's going to say, this is what I think. And because we see through a glass darkly, and when we see Jesus face to face, we'll finally know. We'll probably be like, oh, we were both wrong, okay? And he's right, okay? So hey, when we're talking about a lot of these different things, I just want to challenge your thinking and maybe give you another perspective, okay? All right, so now we'll get to my daughter Reagan. We were in ministry. We had four kids in 5 years. Life was crazy. And I was on a trip with some students to New York, and my wife was at home with the kids, and I get a call, and my wife's like, hey, Reagan broke her arm. I'm like, okay, she's going to have surgery tomorrow. I'm like, okay, just let me know how it goes. And in the surgery the next morning, my daughter had a reaction to the anesthesia. I don't know if any of you are in the medical community or want to be in the medical community, but there's this thing called malignant hyperthermia. It's a genetic condition where you have an allergic reaction sometimes to general anesthesia. And my daughter, we didn't know she had it. She got it from me. Had a reaction. Thankfully, the doctors saw that her CO2 levels were going up, and they started the countermeasures and saved her life. And so what happens is your muscles start, when you have the reaction, your muscles start rapidly contracting, and they don't stop. And so your CO2 levels go up, and your body temperature starts going up, and it's fatal. And if they don't catch it before your temperature goes up, you die. And that's why anesthesiologists make a lot of money. They watch for those things. And they caught it, they saved her life, and this was in March. And so fast forward, we had to go down to North Carolina to be tested genetically for MH to prove we had it. We took her, she got tested, of course she had it. And then we needed the rest of the family to go and get tested to see if we had it as well. And we'd already hit our medical deductible, so we're doing it before the end of the year. And so the rest of us decided to go down to North Carolina and get this testing done. And Reagan had already had it done, so we decided she would stay home and stay with grandparents and go to school while we went down there to do that. So we left her at home, and we went to North Carolina to be tested. And I remember the day we left, she started not feeling well, and my son Chase started not feeling well. They both got sick the same day. So she's at home with grandparents, and Chase is with us, so we're kind of watching this sickness. And so we're down for a whole week. Every day someone's getting tested. And we're talking with grandparents. Oh, Reagan's sick, so we had them take her to the doctor. The doctor checked her out. Says, yeah, I think she's just got, just a regular bug like it's going around. We'll keep watching her. On a Wednesday, that was a Tuesday. On a Wednesday, she started feeling better, had a good day. Thursday morning, we called, and she had thrown up and wasn't feeling good again on the Thursday. And so we called a friend who was a nurse, said, hey, can you go please look at her? And she said, yeah, I think she got a stomach bug on top of this other thing, but, I think that's what's going on. And Chase, he was still sick. And so then Friday, we finished our test, and we started driving home. And called home, and yeah, she's still really tired. She's not feeling well. And on our way home, it's about an 8-hour drive. I remember very clearly, I don't know if you guys remember this when you were younger, but it was a Columbine shooting. It was back in 2012. I mean, not Columbine. It was Sandy Hook, the Sandy Hook shooting. And I remember we're driving home. It was the day of the Sandy Hook shooting in the elementary school. And they're talking about these children that were killed. And I remember looking at my wife, and I said, I cannot imagine losing one of our kids. I just can't imagine it. Not knowing that night I was going to lose Reagan. We drove the rest of the 4 hours, got home, and I just remember sitting in the driveway when we pulled in. I was like, I'm just so glad to be home. I am so glad to be here. And we walk in the house, and my wife and Reagan was laying on our bed, and my wife looked at her one look, and she's like, we got to take her to the hospital. Something's not right. And I remember being so frustrated. I'm like, man, we just got here. So I pick her up, and I take her out of the house, and we go to the emergency room. And I remember they were testing her oxygen, like, man, her oxygen is really low. And so they were transporting her to the main hospital in Lexington, and I rode in the ambulance with her. And I remember the EMTs, it's like, yeah, that, very fortunate that we got her in here, because her oxygen was so low. And I'm like, man, okay. And so we get into the hospital room, and she's there on the bed, and I'm looking at her eyes, and I'm praying with her, and I'm singing over her, and they're like, okay, Dad, you need to step out so we can do some tests. I remember the last thing I saw was her eyes. I told her I loved her. I left the room. And then, I don't know, within 10 minutes, we just see people just running down the halls, and my wife's like, something's not right, something's going on. And then they come to the room, and they say, hey, your daughter's heart stopped when we started working on her. Maybe you want to come in the room and be with her. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? So we go in the room, and they're working on her, pumping her chest. And I just raised my hand and I started praying as loud as I can. In Jesus' name, heal her. Holy Spirit, come, bring healing to her. And I remember them kind of like, usher me out because they're thinking I'm freaking out, which I was. But, they get me out of the room, and then our pastor shows up, and a ton of people from our church show up, and everybody's praying, and they're working on her for probably like an hour, and we're just praying and saying, God, bring healing, bring healing, bring healing. And they come in the room like, okay, I'm sorry, she's gone. And you got to go in there and start asking about stupid, where do you want to bury her, and all this stupid stuff right after that. And I was like, what is going on? I mean, I was completely shocked. 2 days before that, I'm sitting with a friend in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I'm telling him, man, I feel like God picked us up and placed us in Lexington because that was our first year in Lexington. I said, I feel like he's placed us here and he's just blessing our socks off. This is 2 days before I lose my daughter. I remember, when Jesus comes on the scene, he announces his ministry. I don't know if you remember this, but in Luke chapter 4, he says, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me. He's anointed me to preach good news to the poor, right? And he goes down the path. He's quoting from Isaiah 61. And one of the things he says in there, which just didn't, after this time, it didn't ring true to me. He says, he's talking about the people who are going to be his followers. He said, they will be called, anybody remember the phrase he said, oaks of righteousness. And I remember thinking, Okay, here's a picture of a nice, great big oak. This is what I envisioned. This is what I envisioned, what oak of righteousness is. But the reality is, most of my life, this is what I feel like. I feel like Charlie Brown's Christmas tree. Some of you in here, I can guarantee, you have worship time and you're looking around, or you see people raising their hands and you're doing your best to follow suit, and you look at them and other people, even in this room, other preachers or other people are like, they have it all together, and you're like, I know me, I don't have it together. Like, they're an oak of righteousness and I'm Charlie Brown's tree. This is how I feel most of the time. When I think of men of God and preachers, this is what I envision. And this man of God in the field having a harvest. You know what the reality of my life? Most of the time, this is me. This is literally me. Since I was a kid, I've always felt safe in like really enclosed spaces. And so I remember, this was sometime after Reagan, and I was planning a church, and I was a chaplain at a Christian school, and my dad was dying of cancer, and I was so overwhelmed. And my wife comes home one day, and this is me. So she took a photo of it. I love my wife dearly. I had a blanket over my head. I'm in the corner of the couch. I got my pajamas on. That's me. All right? Look, this is how I feel. This is my reality. Some of you probably feel the same way, and it's okay. And what do we do in those moments? What do we do when what we see in the Scripture, what we hear in the Scripture, and it isn't lining up with our life? What do we do? How do we handle that? You know, one thing that's helped me the most is realize it isn't about me. It's not about you. It is this exchanged life. Matter of fact, Jesus says, hey, I'm not calling many noble, not many mighty, not many wise. I call the foolish things of the world. And, here's my kids. Actually, this is 1 month before Reagan died. We were picking out our Christmas tree. And I love this photo with my daughter, Avi, on Reagan's shoulders. And Reagan had the greatest smile and laugh. This was us. I love this photo of Reagan. It's her little friend Olivia down at the bottom. I learned some things. What do we do when... I really wrestled with the Scriptures I wrestled with God after we lost Reagan. I remember reading Hebrews chapter 11. I didn't read my Bible for a little bit after it. I was just in shock. But I picked up my Bible and I started reading Hebrews chapter 11. I don't know if you know that chapter, but it's like the Hall of Faith. And man, I got to read some of this to you, because I was like reading this and I was getting so angry as I was reading it. And it's like, and everybody wins. Everybody stinking wins in this chapter. It's like Abraham and the walls came tumbling down at Jericho. And then it says this, towards the end it says, and what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets. I'm getting angry. Like, everybody's story is a good story. And my story isn't a good story. Who by faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, and who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. Women received back their dead, raised to life again, and I just threw my Bible. I was so angry. Because I remember after her dying, and I remember that night, all weekend long, begging God to raise her back to life. I'm like, God, you can do this. You have the power for your glory, for your name. Bring her back to life. Begging Him all night long. I remember the Saturday night, it was a Friday, she died. Saturday night, I'm crying out to God all night long, begging Him, please bring her back to life for your glory, for your honor. You can do this, God. You can do it. And I remember waking up Sunday morning sick as a dog. I was like, God, take my place. Let me die and bring her back to life. And I woke up sick as a dog Sunday morning. I'm like, maybe He's doing it. Maybe He's doing it. And I go to the hospital. I was thinking I had the stupid flu. That's all I had. And I was so angry. And I'm reading this. I'm like, this is not true. They receive back their dead and you raise them back to life? How is this? This is not my story. And then somehow, some way, I picked my Bible back up again because probably it's like, this is what you're supposed to do. So I picked my Bible back up again. And then I started reading from that point on, and then he rescued my heart. Listen to what he says. There were others. And then he goes into this, who were tortured, refusing to be released so that they might gain an even better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging, and even chains and imprisonment. They didn't win. Their stories weren't great. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawed in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. And then this is the phrase that rescued my heart. The world was not worthy of them. That's my Reagan. The world wasn't worthy. What a compliment. What a compliment. But what do we do? What do we do? I remember being like, God, people would come to me as like, hey, we're 2 or 3 are gathered in your name, there am I in the midst of them. Whatever you ask, I will do. I'm like, well, there was like 50 of us at the hospital praying, asked you to heal her, and you didn't. What do you do with that? You know, I had to learn to see, I was reading the scriptures through sometimes prescriptive lenses instead of descriptive lenses, you know? Yeah, well, sometimes he answers when 2 or 3 are gathered. Sometimes he doesn't. You know, when James says, hey, if anybody's sick among you, let them call for the others, let them anoint with oil, confess their sins, and they will be healed. Well, I have no doubt that when James was writing that to those people, had they followed his instructions, that was going to happen. But I've been there many times where we've done that exact same thing, anointed people with oil, they've confessed their sins, and they weren't healed, and they died. Because a lot of times what we do with the scriptures is we take something that he's describing that happened and we prescribe it for our life. Be careful with how you handle the scriptures. It's going to throw you off. I remember people, we were talking Dallas, you know, I don't know, you know his story, right? His father was killed in a plane crash. We were talking about how some people say some of the stupidest things. I remember someone saying, you know, I think I know how you feel. And I'm like, oh, they had a child die. And like, my cat died. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? You know, and I wanted to grab him by the throat and kill him. And I kept having to tell myself, they love me and they're just trying to help. But don't ever tell someone who's lost a family member that you lost an animal, okay? But I know they love their animal. I had to see the scriptures through eternal eyes. I remember saying, God, I prayed for her healing. And I remember saying to my heart, I did heal her. And I'm like, that's not what I meant. He's like, I healed her where Bryon, you just want to be with her. And I made a way where you'll never have to say goodbye again. We're just not there yet. I'm like, man, but it's not fair. Some people get to keep their kids this life and they get them in the next life. And he doesn't always give answers to that. And let me share this, a little bit of advice with you. When you think you're hearing something from God for other people, there are sometimes some hurts so deep that no matter what you think you're hearing, you probably need to not say it. Because some hurts are so deep that only God himself can speak to those things. And so in this case, like I know your heart is good sometimes, but some hurts you need to let God speak for himself because he can do that and he will do that. And these are some of those hurts that are that deep. I remember someone saying that, well, if anything good comes out of this, that it would be worth it. If someone comes to know Jesus from this, that's the why behind this. He took her out so that someone, it's almost like, hey, I got to kill this little girl so someone can come to know Jesus. I want you to think about that. Think about that. Is that true? Would God take a life? Does he need to take a life so someone else can come to know him? Who died so that we could know him? Jesus. One death to end all death. He doesn't need to kill a little girl for someone to come to know him. Now, can someone come to know him from her story? Yeah, is it because of it or is it in spite of it? It's in spite of it. See, this is the God we serve. He doesn't have to take people out so they can come to know him. But this is what it is. He brings resurrection power to all of our stories. And if we partner with him, he will bring life out of death. See? So he didn't need her to die to bring life. But what he will do is he will bring life because he's a good, kind Heavenly Father, and he gives the middle finger to the enemy. That's what he does. That's what he does. And I love him for it. You know, people will remember when they're hurting that you show up. They won't always remember what you say. So be there. Be present. The greatest gift we had was having a community of faith that carried us. There is no way I'm standing here today except for people who carried us during that time. I want to tell you the thing that is etched in my mind, the kindness of our Father. The greatest gift I had the day after Reagan died. We're in our bed and we're just trying to get out of bed, but can't. And my friend Danny and his wife Rebecca came over. I'll never forget it. And they just crawled into bed with us, just hugged us and cried, and let us cry. Didn't say anything, just crawled into bed. That was the greatest gift, to have someone with you in your sorrow. So I want to encourage you guys. There's one common denominator of all of humanity, and that's suffering. Be with in people's suffering. Man, I'll never forget that. It was the greatest gift I had. I'm sorry, I'm just shooting things off of my memory. I wrote down some things that I want to make sure you knew from our story here. You know, I remember people, he's a good friend, but he came over and he has a theology that God orchestrates everything. God is what I call meticulous sovereignty. It's okay if you believe that. I understand why some people believe that. I can see how they can see that from the scriptures. I don't believe it. But I remember him coming and he had this idea that, okay, God, plans everything. And one of the reasons that things happen in our lives is for our sanctification, okay? And so he comes in our door and he says, there's some sanctifying purpose in this for you, I'm so thankful that the Lord isn't putting my wife and I through something like that, and he laughed and my wife's like, Bryon, he better never come in this house again and say something like it again. Wait, he comes like a week later. He says the same thing. My wife, I thought she was gonna attack him, and I'm like keeping her at bay. And listen, God doesn't need. It's like people saying, "I thank God for the gift of cancer," because I wouldn't be who I am today without cancer. I can understand why people say that, but I want to tell you I totally disagree with that. What does the scriptures tell us? It says that we have been given everything necessary for what? For life and godliness. The death of Jesus, the gift of the Holy Spirit, the Word of God. It's like saying those aren't enough. And so God's up in heaven like, well, I got to pull out the big guns. I got to give them cancer so they could be more like me. I don't believe his tools for sanctification are the things he came to get rid of. Okay? And so be careful in your theology. If your theology isn't good in suffering, it might not be good theology. Okay? And be careful telling people, you might believe it, it's fine, but be careful telling people God orchestrates and plans all of it. Okay? I'll give you a case in point. I had a student come in my office one year, and teacher was upset with him because he was aloof in class, didn't care about math. So they sent him to their chaplain, go talk to the chaplain. And so I'm talking to him like, I'm going to get to know this kid's story. And come to find out he was adopted. First family he was adopted into, the dad abused him sexually. Got taken out of the home, placed in another home. The mom abused him sexually. Taken out of the home, was in his third home. Okay? And he's mad at the world. Of course he doesn't care about math, right? And then, and so I said, well, he's like, but I've talked to people who love Jesus and talked to counselors like you. I was like, okay, what'd they tell you? I said, well, God allowed me to go through that so I could help other people who've gone through it. I said, well, how does that make you feel? He's like, well, F God. I'm like, yeah, I could understand that. If God had me sexually abused so that I could help someone else who was sexually abused. Now, can God use it? Yes, but did God orchestrate it? I don't believe that. So be careful. All right, last but not least, I want to tell you, look for the kindness of God. If you're struggling, look for his kindness. He seems to always speak to me through film. I know you can't watch movies, but God speaks to me a lot through film. And that's what I'm saying. He can use those things for his kingdom. And I remember when I take students on trips, and I always tell them, look for him in his word, look for him in creation, but look for him in a street sign. Look for him on a note on the ground. Look for him in a conversation. He has something for you. And I took that to my own life. And I took a group of students, a couple times he's done this for me. One time I had a group of students, we took a mission trip to France and England. And one of the things we always do is try to do a cultural thing as well. And we went to see Les Mis. And this was after Reagan. But on the way to Les Mis, an ambulance went by. And that was always a trigger for me because I rode in the ambulance with my daughter. And so going into Les Mis, my heart was already stirred up. I was thinking about Reagan. And I don't know if you know anything about Les Mis, but it's this story of his love for Cassette. And I swear to you, it was so beautiful. Part of the story, I was sitting there, and it's like the Lord said, just close your eyes. And I closed my eyes, and I was listening to the beauty of a father's love for his daughter, and it was almost as if Reagan was right there with me. Like I could sense her. And I didn't want to open my eyes, but I felt his kindness there. Another trip with students, I was coming home and watching on an airplane. I know you're going to Turkey, and you can't watch films on the airplane. And but I was watching a film, and I've learned through the years, make sure you tell people you're watching films on an airplane because they're edited on an airplane. I remember for a long time I didn't realize they were edited on our plane. And so I'd tell people, hey, I watched this film, and come to find out there was some really bad stuff in them. But it was edited out on the film, on the plane. But I remember this film I was watching called The Impossible. I don't know if you remember this, about the tsunami. And there was a scene in it. Oh, Dallas, I don't know. Is there sound? Yeah. There was a scene in it, and I want to show it to you, that, again, the Lord rescued my heart. Before this, the other day, I was watching, you ever seen Narnia? Yeah. All right. So like the new Narnia movies, right? Anyway, my daughter Zoe and I were watching Narnia the other day. I think it was Prince Caspian. I can't remember. One of them. And it was the one where they were back in Narnia, and Lucy keeps thinking she's seeing Aslan. And no one else can see Aslan. And she's like, I think I saw Aslan. I think I should go to him. But she doesn't go to him because she's afraid of what other people are thinking. And all this stuff happens, and people are getting killed, and there's battles and things. And finally, they're towards the end of the film, and the battle is almost lost. And she's like, I've got to go get Aslan. He's our only hope. And so she leaves and goes and pursues Aslan. She finally finds him. And Aslan, and she's like, I thought it was you. She's like, well, why didn't you come to me? She's like, well, no one else could see you. I was afraid of what other people would think. He's like, well, why would that stop you? Okay, kind of a soft rebuke. And she's like, and she asked him this question. And this is a moment where he rescued my heart. She said, well, had I come to you, would all the bad things that have happened not have happened? And I love what he says to her. He says, well, what would have been, could have been, we'll never know. But what will be is another matter altogether. And right there, I'm watching with Zoe. This is a month ago. And God rescues my heart. Look, I like to ask all kinds of, what if I had brought Reagan with us down there and she was with us? in North Carolina? What if I had left and got home a day earlier? What if I had driven faster? What if this? What if that? And the reality is I don't know. But what will be is another matter altogether. Because of Jesus, because of his death. Listen, life with Jesus is hard. But life without Jesus would be impossible. All right? I can't imagine not having the hope of the resurrection. Because what is coming is what I saw on this scene on an airplane. I don't know, is it going to work? We'll find out.
Yeah, we're just working on it to connect.
Oh, typical. Yeah. Typical. It might not work, but okay. Where are we at? Here. Let's see if it works. Tom Holland, Spider-Man. Okay, all right. Do I just push? There's no sound. Dallas, we have sound? Oh, there we go. You're like, I got to see a film. You don't know how long it's been?
What?
You can't on a tablet. The AirPlay's
Oh, you can't? Can't do it? Oh, well. Huh. Show it tomorrow. Off the iPad?
I'll pull it up on the screen.
Okay. Well, doesn't matter. All right, I'm going to wrap up with this. All right. So thank you for just bearing with me tonight. I know this is different. I'm just sharing some stories. But I love the scene. It's kind of the reunion scene. They got separated. And one thing I love about it is because the siblings find their brother, and then the dad and mom, they get him. Another thing I want to share with you is, when I envision getting to heaven, and I hope this doesn't sound bad, but I'm really wanting to see Reagan first. All right? And I want to tell you this. I don't think that's a bad thing. I know some people are like, no, you should probably want to see Jesus above all else. I am so grateful for Jesus. Don't get me wrong. He's my life. Without him, there's nothing. But I believe we have the unselfish nature of Jesus. One thing I see in the Gospels, it says he gave, like when he raised the dead, he said he gave the child back to the parent. And so I almost envision like the spiritual side of me is like, okay, I'm going to go, and I'm like, okay, I got to do my duty thing. I'm going to go talk to Jesus first, right? Because I got to worship him and thank him, and you know what I envision him saying is like, what are you doing? Go see your daughter. And him getting so much pleasure out of me running and the reunion I'm going to have with my daughter one day. I absolutely cannot wait. And I don't think he's bothered that I want to see her first. I think he's delighted. And I think he's going to see that reunion. I think he's just going to smile. And then I'm going to look, and tears in my eyes, and it's going to be a knowing. It's only because of you. But I don't think he has any problem that the very first person I hope I get to see is my daughter running up to me. And then my kids getting to see their sister again. I cannot wait for that. And so, all right, so let me bless you guys. I don't know your stories. I want to get to know your stories. I don't feel like you know someone unless you know their story. And so I'm here. I would love to sit and talk if anyone wants to talk. We're going to break patterns and things in our families and change things. Divorce is done in my family with me and my kids. Done. All right? It's over. It stops here. And And the being afraid to talk about difficult things stops here, you know? And you guys, I'm excited for your future. Whatever your story is, whatever your family patterns are, it stops. And you have you're writing a new story. And your kids are going to be blessed because of it. And the world is going to be blessed because of it. So thank you for letting me talk about Reagan and share a little bit about that, some of the lessons I learned through that. Hopefully maybe it was a little bit of help to you. I don't know. But I don't think you know me if you don't know that part of our story. And I'm really excited to say about Israel and what God is doing there and what he's planning on doing. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. All right, so let's, can I pray? All right. Okay, Lord, I am so thankful for you taking broken people and filling us with your Spirit, giving us your identity, Jesus, so that we can live life to the fullest. I thank you for healing us, taking our woundedness, letting us walk into freedom and wholeness. Lord, I don't know what's the stories in front of me. I don't know what each student has been through, but you do. There's been hurt, there's been shame, there's been abuse, there's been betrayal. There's those who haven't been able to share who they really are. I ask for freedom. Lord, I ask for a safe place. I ask that you would set them free. And Lord, would they find in you the kindness and hope that they're looking for? Would they find in each other those safe places where they can share? And then would they make themselves vulnerable to being challenged and grow? And so, Lord, I ask for healing and hope. And tonight, I ask for dreams and visions as they lay down and rest. Lord, I ask for clarity. And so, Lord, I pray that you would help these students be like your disciples, sift through the good and the bad, take the good, leave the bad, give them wisdom to wade through the stuff that was said tonight. I ask you to take these fumbling attempts and you'd use the seeds for your good. And so I thank you for the opportunity. I ask your blessings on these students tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.